But let's get right into it. We are going to talk today about we want to focus on two ballot measures, sorry, that Oakland Rising is supporting. One is the progressive business tax, and the other is the Fair Elections Oakland ballot measure. But I know that both you, Dan, and Nikki, um, during City Council, were able to really sponsor a few other ballot measures that have really big implications in terms of housing, and infrastructure here in Oakland, as well as just cause laws for tenants and protections. And so those are definitely things that Oakland Rising has not fully endorsed yet, but they are issues that really matter to our community and to our supporters. So I definitely want to try to talk a little bit about those too. But maybe we could start with the progressive business tax, because that was such a process. And we've talked about it before, so I don't think we have to get into too much detail. But I'm wondering, Nikki, if you'd be willing to talk about what folks can look forward to in the fall as the ballot measures come out, because people will be getting their ballots, their mail-in ballots, in early October. So what can they look forward to, and what should they know about the progressive and equitable business tax?
Thanks, Liz. So this is something that I've been working on since 2020. We have a number of taxes here in Oakland. People may not realize we have a business license tax. And so if you operate a business, you need to get a license with the city of Oakland, and you pay a tax, and that has been a flat rate tax. So no matter how much money you make, you might be, say, a small mom and pop grocer, or you might be a chain grocer, you pay the same exact flat tax rate overall. And so that is not fair or equitable. We have been working to update that. It hasn't been updated since 2005. And so voters are going to have an opportunity this November to make Oakland's corporate business tax more equitable, more progressive and tiered, so that basically if you earn more, you pay more. So this is an opportunity to make sure that the bigger businesses pay their fair share and contribute to city services. And it's also an opportunity to make sure that the smallest businesses, those who have been impacted by COVID in particular, restaurants, grocery stores, personal services like salons, that they actually get permanent tax relief. And what voters should know is that by making the system more fair and equitable, again, so that if you earn more, you pay more, we're going to be able to raise more than $20 million additionally for Oakland's general fund. And that will go into our city services to address the issues that we all care about, like homelessness, like keeping our streets and sidewalks in repair, like keeping our streets clean of litter and illegal dumping. And so this is an opportunity to make our system more fair, like I said, to support small businesses, to improve city services. And I think these are all things that Oaklanders want. And it also makes sure that we're on par with other cities that have a similar progressive tax structure, and Oakland will still be very competitive as an economy.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll highlight briefly is that the sponsors of this legislation, in particular, Councilmember Tao and myself, we did work with a broad group of stakeholders. And I know Councilmember Kalb talked to a lot of stakeholders as well, as did Councilmember Fife. And so we were able to get agreement with the business community that this is something that we should all do and make sure the system works for everyone.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think one thing to also add is that, you had spearheaded the work, but there was that Blue Ribbon Commission that really came out with that. And much of this current ballot measure mirrors much of the report that came out of that commission. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we basically took the recommendations on the tax rates from the Blue Ribbon Commission and, continue to address them, listening to the needs of business owners in particular.
Oh, really appreciate that. And you know, Oakland Rising is one of those organizations that had also been working side by side with you on moving this. I just want to give some props out to some of the other organizations like ACE and East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy, as well as some of our union partners.
That's right.
The Firefighters Union, SEIU 10 to 1, FIPTE. Local 20, like it was such a good broad range of folks. We also got a lot of support from small businesses, including the Indie Alliance and folks at the Real People's Fund. And so we're really excited. Like, we think that this is going to really make a huge difference. Like $20 million can really make a difference for a lot of our programs. And I know, Dan, you supported it as well. And I'm just wondering, what's like one part of the Progressive Business Act that you're really looking forward to when it passes? Because we're hopeful that it will.
I'm looking forward to informing the public and campaigning to make sure it passes. And I wanted to acknowledge Nikki, Council President Boss's leadership on this. She's been working 2.5 years. While other council members may have been involved, and that's fine, that's good, there was one leader on this, and that was Nikki, and spent a lot of time on it, working with our coalition partners there. And I just want to acknowledge her great work on this, and I'm thrilled it's on the ballot. And as I know, Oakland Rising and many groups will be urging support for it. And I will be one of those urging support for this. And I think there's so many aspects of it. I think it's written very well, and I appreciate the important modifications in order to avoid a ridiculously horrible battle with the potential business opponents that have been set aside because of now we're all kind of pretty much kumbaya and they're all supporting this. I think that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. And if you asked me a year ago whether I thought that would happen, I might have said privately, I don't think so, but I'm glad it did. I'm glad I was wrong. And so I think this is great. And there are a lot of sections of this that really make a lot of sense. And this is nothing highly unusual. There are a handful of other cities in California that have something like this already. And so it makes sense for those cities, and it makes sense for our city too. And like Nikki said, it's an opportunity to raise more funds to help fund the vital services that people rightfully ask for and demand in our city, and that's what the money will be used for. So I really appreciate the effort and the final version, and I'm thrilled to be able to vote for it, and urge all our constituents, respectively, to vote for it as well.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it as well. And we've always said too is that one ballot measure is not going to save us. And just because we get the funds into the general fund, we know that a big portion of the work that needs to be done is once it's in the ballot. Once it's in the general fund, like, where's the money going? And so just so folks to remember that just because you vote for a ballot measure, there's also the work involved with ensuring that that money gets to our communities and go to services that really matter to us, right? Go to our parks, go to our libraries, so that we don't have to continually tax our community on regressive or other taxes, additional taxes, when our corporations are making billions of dollars and can very easily contribute to the cities in which they will continue to thrive, right? It only benefits corporations as well to help maintain the city that they're located in. So great work. I just want to, yay! Yes, and I really agree with you, Dan, that thank you, Nikki, for so much for your leadership on this. And that was one commitment you made when getting into office, that you would try to see this through. And it's so great to see the commitment and the continual work that you do with community and co-governing with the community to get things like this passed.
Thanks, Liz. And I certainly appreciate you shouting out all the amazing organizations that worked with us, small businesses, community organizations, labor unions. And like Dan said, at the end of the day, we were able to build consensus with the Chamber of Commerce. Who would have thought? Because everyone realizes this is an old law that needs to be updated, and we all need to invest in our Oakland neighborhoods and communities and services. So I'm excited that voters will have this opportunity.
Yeah. And so I just see in the chat, there's a couple of things I want. The one is from Beta Les Beth. I love that it will take some pressure off of small businesses who have been paying more than their fair share of taxes. Let's keep it, find more ways to help them thrive. And I just want to address a question that was earlier. How do you plan to nourish the teachers and community, providing free programming, food, and vital education at Parker Elementary, recently closed by OUSD despite 100% community opposition? And in fact, actually, we were supposed to have the folks organizing that on the last Monday meals, but I got COVID, so we had to cancel. But we'll be bringing them on so that folks can learn more about what's happening at Parker Elementary and the grassroots work that's actually happening there. So I'm going to transition us now. We're going to talk a little bit about Fair Elections Oakland. Oakland Rising has been a part of this coalition that has been also working for several years on bringing fair elections ballot measure to Oakland. And a lot of folks might think of it as only as the democracy dollars or democracy voucher ballot measure, but it is just one portion of actually a larger work around bringing a more equitable electoral process, as well as a more equitable political process, I think, for folks to engage with City of Oakland and elected positions. And so Dan, you worked with us, and I really appreciate, I want to give a shout out to you. I want to give a shout out to all the organizations that have been working on this for a while. Oakland Rising, Bay Rising, California Common Cause, ACLU Northern California, League of Women Voters, Oakland, the Asian Law Caucus, and MapLight. And I want to just really give them props, because I've worked on a lot of ballot measure committees, and this has to be my favorite, because the coalition itself, the values by which they function is amazing. And so, so Dan, you were one of the sponsors, and Nikki, you also co-sponsored with Dan. And so I guess I want to hear from you, like what can people look forward to seeing on the ballot, and what does it mean? What is Fair Elections Oakland? And it's pretty wonky. So, for folks to help folks understand what Fair Elections Oakland ballot measure is.
Well, thank you. And I'll start, and then Nikki can join in. And also, Carol Fife was also one of the co-authors.
Yes, thank you.
And so, elections, running for office is not easy for anybody. And there was a study done by our city's ethics commission that showed that most of the campaign contributions to local candidates, and whether that's city council or mayor or what have you, come from just a handful of zip codes. And most people in Oakland could probably guess what zip codes, what parts of town those are.
1%.
Yeah, right.
1%.
Exactly. Yeah, and so it identifies a disproportionate amount of influence that some people or people in some neighborhoods have as to who can get elected to city offices. No matter what district you're in, still a lot of the money comes from other parts of town. And so even if we had a system of public financing, which we kind of had, we had this limited public financing system, which was, by all accounts, very limited, didn't really have the impact it needed to have. You would still have, if it's done through this matching funds or reimbursement, you still have the same challenge, the same problem, that most contributions come from a handful of zip codes or a handful of neighborhoods, and it doesn't accurately reflect the broad diversity of our wonderful city. And so we try to think of what would be a good system of public financing to increase engagement by voters in the contribution process, to encourage and facilitate more grassroots candidates to be able to run, and just to have an overall better democratic system. And of course, democracy is not cheap. it takes money to have strong democracy. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. That's the reality. We know that at all levels of government. And so, as you said, your coalition that you're part of, Liz, looked at what happened in Seattle, the city of Seattle, and they created several years ago a democracy dollars public financing system for local elections, where, and this would happen here in Oakland, every registered voter and every resident who is otherwise legally allowed to make a campaign donation in Oakland to have 4 $25 vouchers that they are free to give to any eligible candidate for any local office. That includes mayor, city council, school board, city attorney, and what have you, at any time during the election season. Now, the candidates running have to kind of prove themselves. You can't just have someone walk out their front door and say, I'm then
I'm running.
haywire here. So you have to have candidates who create a certain amount of eligibility by showing they could attract a lot of small donations from their from the city or from their district. And once they meet that threshold, they become an eligible candidate, and they are allowed to accept these democracy dollars, these vouchers, from any resident, any voter, any resident in the city who can give these dollars. And then the city reimburses, the city then, the candidate then sends these vouchers to the city, and the city hands them the actual money that they have to use for local campaign purposes. And it's a way to, broaden the engagement of voters, of residents in the process. And what Seattle found is that once they installed the Democracy Dollars program there, people who used to not be engaged in local elections and used to not even vote, now all of a sudden were coming out and say, oh, I could give a donation, I might as well vote too. And so it increased voter turnout, as well as increased engagement in donating to campaigns, which then in turn facilitated more grassroots candidates and more diversity on the Seattle Council. And it gives us the opportunity to do the same thing. This is, of all the ballot measures, and we have a lot of really good ballot measures on the ballot this year. I'm very excited about all of them, but this is the one that I'm most excited about, most really passionate about. And this is not going to be easy to pass. It's not cheap, like we said. Democracy is not cheap. And so it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of coalition work, and a lot of campaigning to really get this passed. And I'm very, very excited about it. And it also, it also increases disclosure requirements for independent expenditure mailings, and makes other updated changes to the entire campaign finance system in Oakland. And I think it's a wonderfully worded measure, but it's complex, it's long, and it's going to take a lot of time to explain it to everybody and to urge people to support it, so we could have a stronger democratic system in Oakland.
Yeah, we did some polling around it, and when you just come right out and say democracy vouchers or democracy dollars, people are like, what is that? But when you take the time to really explain it to folks, we found that more than 60% of the folks we talked to were very happy to get on board with that. And I think that the engagement, I'm sure both of you have run campaigns, and so I know that a lot of folks, candidates and ballot measures and consultants, they like to not talk to anybody in the flatlands because they're like, they're low propensity voters, they don't engage, they don't vote. And when Oakland Rising really thinks about it, we think that it's because people don't talk to them. Nobody goes and asks. But we know that when you ask somebody, people are more likely to do it, right? And so when Oakland Rising, when we did a voter analysis of, our own engagement in the community, that when we talk to voters across the city, depending on the district, when we talk to voters and we say, go out and vote, and then these are the things that we think are important to you, that people between 75 to 85% will vote, and then they will vote in alignment with our values. And I think that that's really important for people to understand. So the voucher system or the democracy dollars really gets candidates to have to go and talk to people that they generally don't talk to, that they dismiss. And I think this helps to break down some of those myths or those stereotypes that people have about people who live in the flatlands, and I think that's important. And I wonder, Nikki, because you've also signed on, you were really excited too when we talked to you as a coalition about joining on and co-sponsoring. And so I just want to hear from you, what parts of this are you really excited about as well?
Well, I am super excited about this. I'm really thankful that Councilmember Kalb, Dan, took on the lead on this one while I was working on a couple other ballot measures like the equitable and progressive business tax. And also Councilmember Fife signed on, as you heard. This is something I have been very interested in since Seattle created a system to put into place, as I've been watching how things have evolved with more and more people in that particular city getting engaged and more progressive grassroots candidates as well. You know, I came, you know, we are on our lunch break, so I'm not here as a council member. But I got recruited to run back in 2018 as someone who was a community organizer who never thought about running for office. And it took a lot, an incredible amount of time, an incredible amount of fundraising. I was up against an incumbent. And this recognizes that, as you heard from Dan, it's really hard to run campaigns because you need $160,000 to run a strong city council campaign. And so this is really going to help level the playing field, because it means candidates can, rather than spending their time fundraising from a very small percentage of political donors, candidates can spend their time talking with constituents, talking with residents, talking with people all over their district or the city if they're running for city office. And in particular, paying attention to our flatland communities who've been underinvested in, so that we can partner together, hear those issues, work on those issues. And, you know, it really, I think, will be game changing, because it means rather than fundraising, we can do the work of really listening to and representing other Oaklanders. That's what I'm most excited about. I think it means that we will have a much more robust slate of candidates running for office. That's right. Who are committed to Oakland, who are out talking to Oaklanders, and who are raising democracy vouchers rather than money from more traditional donors. So I think it will really shape not only our elections over time, but hopefully shape the council and other elected offices to be more representative of the values that Oaklanders have.
Yeah, and I think that one other thing that I wanted to point out was not only did Carol Fife help to be the third co-sponsor on this, but actually before she came into office, when she was working for ACE, she actually worked with the coalition on some of the early parts of this legislation. And so just want to also give Carol Fife that props as well. So I wanted to point out one of the things that Dan talked about. So our sister organization, Oakland Rising Action, they did a voter guide. And on that, you can see that you have to put a disclosure claimer, like this is who paid for this. So when you get those things in the ballot, in your mailbox, right, like little mailers from from candidates or from ballot measures, you'll see that at the bottom. And so one of the things that is put in there, it also tells you who the top 3 donors are towards that ballot measure or towards that candidate. And because we often actually see that money is not just coming from that 1% in Oakland, but it's actually coming from outside of Oakland, that corporations are actually playing big money and investing in particular candidates to influence our city politics and our policies and budgets. Like, for example, Bloomberg spent $150,000 on one race in 2018, and for a school district race that had only at the time traditionally only needed about $30,000 to $40,000. They spent $150,000, and that person eventually went on to vote for school closures. So I think that this is important, that when we think about like who's coming into office and who's representing us is really important. There's so much more. We'll continue to just talk about Fair Elections Oakland. We'll talk about more about the progressive business tax as well as we continue to campaign. If you all are interested in volunteering with us, go to oaklandrising.org, sign up to get on our volunteer list, on our newsletter, so that you know when you can volunteer with us. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some other ballot measures just quickly, that there are a couple others that we're talking about.
I just wanted to say thank Oakland Rising again for being one of the leaders of the coalition for the Democracy Dollars Fair Elections Act, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the other coalition partners that you rattled off earlier. Just as an FYI, I used to work for California Common Cause as a
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but back in the I'm showing my age here. Back in the 1980s, long time ago. I had more hair on my head back then. I was their field organizer in the Bay Area and did a lot of work on local elections. And so it's nice to once again come back around to supporting public financing and clean money, which is so essential to having a true strong democratic system.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Yes.
Well, if Dan's gonna go back, maybe I'll go back too. So I have a connection to Oakland Rising. I was the board chair a long time ago when I used to run one of the member organizations, the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy. And the work of Oakland Rising and Oakland Rising Action, I think, is really important, not only on this measure, but the ongoing work, doing outreach and education and engagement, not just during election year, but throughout the year, especially in our flatland communities. Because we know very well here in Oakland that we need more equity, we need more investment in our flatland communities, especially in BIPOC communities. And when I used to go door to door with Oakland Rising, when we were able to talk with people about how these issues would impact their day-to-day lives, like when we collected signatures to put the minimum wage on the ballot,
That's right.
People would vote like you said, Liz. And so
Yeah.
I am hoping when we talk with people about a progressive corporate business tax that could mean more city services, when we talk with people about fair elections and democracy vouchers, so that you have a real choice in terms of donating to, engaging, and voting for candidates who represent your values, your interests, and the issues you care about, people who will fight for housing, for real community investment, that we will really be able to give a greater voice to people. So thank you as well for your work and the work of the whole coalition that worked on both of these measures, because it really is, it does take a lot of community engagement and organizing, and I'm looking forward to engaging as a volunteer on the election as well.
Oh, I so appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And for Oakland Rising, I just want to give a props to our daily team members who are calling daily to folks in the community, and to all of our partner organizations that help to volunteer and bring their members out to volunteer. And we're beginning to build up a lot of momentum towards the fall, towards November. Y'all, we are very close. It is about to be August, September, October, and we have 2 weeks to vote in October. It is no longer election day. It is the last day of elections. So just to remember that for folks. I just wanted to point out, I just noticed in the chat there is a question about, is this system found in any other Bay Area or California city? Not yet. And so we want to be the first in Oakland, in California, to lead off, because we know that Oakland is such a leader, not only in California, but across this country, for really innovative ways to really think about systems change and what does it look like to bring electoral power to folks that are usually targeted to be left out. And we want to really build that equitable democracy. And so that's really important to us. So some things that we also worked on in the past was to establish just cause laws. That actually is one of the ways in which much of the just cause laws across the country are based off of. And so what folks should know is that in Oakland, you have to have just cause to be evicted from your home if you're a renter. And I think that some of the fight that we had won such major wins for Oakland that we wanted to, they're looking at expanding that. And so some of that expansion, and Dan, you had helped to bring that to the city council. And there was a lot of contention around it. There was a lot of discussion. And I think that my understanding is that it'll bring 13,000 more renters under just cause protections. And so I'm really excited to see that, because as a tenant whose landlord owned a building that was 1 year built after the cutoff year for protection. Yes, and shout out to Casa Justa Just Cause, one of Oakland Rising's partner organizations that led that work. I got evicted because I was not protected by those just cause laws. So to see that expansion for me is really, really important. And I know for both of you that housing is such a big issue. So Dan, do you want to give us a quick overview about what people can see on the ballot?
Sure. We have, like you said, we have a just cause for eviction set of laws, or a law set of provisions here in Oakland. We've had it for many years, but it doesn't apply to everybody. And we've had this for the past 5-6 years. We've had this odd threshold where if you live in a building that was built before 1996, then you're covered under just cause. And if you live in a building after 1996, some arbitrary year, you're not.
That's right.
And it's like, well, I was like, what the heck is that? Yeah. And so, and that's more than 25 years ago. And so that's not new construction. And so I talked with folks from different advocacy organizations and the challenges they're having. And we're seeing people not just in the older units that maybe are subject to rent control, but even in some of the newer, relatively newer units, people are being subjected to the whim of the rental property owner. And I'm not pointing a finger that, oh, all rental property owners are bad. No, that's not the case at all. Most rental property owners are, decent people. But the tenants, though, if they don't have any rights and any protections, they're just like a commodity, and we can't have it that way. And so this says that if you're in a newer building, and the building is 10 years old or more, then you get those same protections that everybody else gets in Oakland. And so no matter, if you're in a building that was built in 2010, you get the protections right away. If you're in a building that was built in 2015, you have to go 3 more years, or 2 or 3 more years without the protections, then you get them full on. And it was a compromise, like you said, Liz. There was a little bit back and forth negotiation, and got to get the votes. You got to have a little compromise here and there, and we landed on this 10-year transition period where if it's a brand new building for 10 years, the first 10 years you don't have those protections, but after that you absolutely do. And that is a huge improvement from this arbitrary set 1996 law. And so it's a big step forward. And like you said, it's going to bring thousands and thousands of more renters, more units, more renters under these protections that they absolutely deserve. And there's another provision also that we have in this ballot measure, which is very exciting. It says that if you are an educator or another school site employee, or you live in a unit and you have a child who lives in the same unit you do, who is going to school in Oakland, that you can't be evicted during the regular school year for no reason, for no cause. A no cause eviction, a no fault eviction would not be allowed during the regular school year if you're an educator, a school employee, a school site employee, or you have a child who lives with you in going to school. And so it gives a little bit more time for those renters if they would otherwise get evicted because of an owner move-in, for example. And so people should not be thrown out of their school and out of their neighborhood and their neighborhood school because of some no fault of their own. A teacher who struggles sometimes to find a place to live in our expensive city should not be kind of thrown out of their place in the middle of the school year. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I need to go to work to teach, but I don't have a place to live. And so we put that in there, and that will be law once this passes. And so it's a strong improvement over our existing law, the entire measure, and I look forward to getting it passed. And I know President Bass as well has been a supporter of all the tenant protection laws. I authored the tenant protection ordinance with Causa Justa Just Cause back in 2014. We've had strengthening of those since then, and we have a lot to do, but this Just Cause measure is a really important one to vote for it in November, while we continue the efforts at the state level to reform the harmful Costa-Hawkins law that we're still stuck with today.
That's right. That's right. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate just the consistency by which both you and Nikki have really stayed on tenant protections, because oftentimes tenants are just pushed to the side. And, we'll probably hear more about this ballot measure again as we move forward. But I wanted to give Nikki an opportunity in this last few minutes to talk a little bit about this big bond measure that is going to bring $850 million to housing and infrastructure in Oakland. Because, y'all know, we did pay a bond on street pavement. This has been going on for a while, so you probably have had parts of your neighborhood have been repaved, but it's still a work in progress. And for all that money is spent already, and we still have major infrastructure issues around traffic and also housing. It's such a big issue here in Oakland, and so. In that vein, I wanted to hear, what can folks look forward to when seeing that on the ballot in November?
Sure. So folks might remember that in 2016, we passed Measure KK, and that infrastructure and housing bond allowed us to do amazing things. That particular bond was for $600 million, and we were able to triple affordable housing production. We were able to pave and improve countless streets with traffic safety measures as well. And we were also able to invest in facilities and projects. So, all of that was incredibly important to Oakland. We have basically spent our housing funds from that measure, which was only $100 million. We are going to be spending most of those paving funds really soon, and we need to start reinvesting. And so what council did, and I worked on this together with the administration and Councilmember Fife, we have crafted a new bond measure that will continue that work. And like you said, Liz, it will be an increase in investment, an investment of $850 million. And we are going to do this with a policy in place so that we're not raising taxes. That part is incredibly important. We won't be issuing new bonds until the current bonds are retired, because we know that's super important to Oaklanders. And what this means is that rather than the $100 million towards affordable housing we had last time, we're dedicating $350 million. That will allow us to go much, much further in terms of very low income, deeply affordable housing. That means new construction. It also means, very importantly, something I am very committed to, which is preservation of existing affordable housing. Back in 2019, one of the things that we did, working together with ACE Action and the Oakland Community Land Trust, is we created a program using these funds at the time, $14 million of funds, to create a program that allows tenants to purchase their homes with land trusts and make them permanently affordable, take them off the market. And so this will create needed funding for affordable housing, for construction, for preservation, and to continue moving forward in terms of the supportive housing we need for our homeless neighbors. But again, permanent housing is what we need to make progress on to address housing affordability and homelessness. And then, as you mentioned, this is really important to continue our 5-year paving plan, which is just getting started. And we are hearing from Oaklanders in every neighborhood about how important not just getting rid of potholes is, but actual traffic safety for bicyclists, for pedestrians, as well as for vehicles. And so we have to make good on, and thank you to all of the bike and pedestrian advocates who called in, who shared concerns with us. Together with Councilmembers Kalb and Fife, we made sure that we added specific language so that when we are working on street and sidewalk improvements, we're also making sure we're implementing our bike and pedestrian plan. And then finally, there's funding set aside for facilities. We all love our parks and rec centers, our libraries. I know in District 2, we need a new fire station to serve the San Antonio community. So there's also important dollars that will be set aside for those type of improvements so we can continue and complete improvements we've started and hopefully have a little bit as well for new investments and new projects. So I do hope Oaklanders pay attention to this. This one, because it's dedicated funding, needs 2/3 votes. And so I am going to be volunteering on this one. I hope others will too. We need this type of investment in Oakland. If we don't pass this, we will not have another funding source until probably the next election cycle in 2024 for affordable housing. We will not have enough funds to address deeply affordable housing.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for your work on continuing to make Oakland better, make it thrive, make the folks who live here thrive, and really ensuring that housing, we're hoping that, ensuring housing stays here and people are able to stay in Oakland. We know that there has been such a major shift in who lives here, who gets to have a say in the direction of this city. And I know that a lot of folks, there's a lot of polling out there, there's a lot of data out there that people are saying how dissatisfied they are with the direction of Oakland. And there's many ballot measures, so far 8, there could be a couple more. And then there'll be some statewide ballot measures that are coming down. And we have districts 2, 4, 6, city council and OUSD board, as well as the mayor. We have a slate of a county, including District 3 and the district attorney's position. And at the state level, the governor and all of those, there's a bunch of roles. So this ballot is going to be quite thick and quite important. So make sure that when you do get your ballot, you read all the way through the ballot. And then if any of these seem important to you, and thankful to all the folks who have joined us throughout the entire hour, that go to oaklandrising.org, sign up for our newsletter so you know when you get to volunteer with us, phone bank, door knock, text with us. And because that's the way that we're able to engage people, is when we talk to people. And I think that's important in building and thinking about systems change. So just really appreciate you both for coming on. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of your leadership.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you to all the Oakland Rising partners. I can't remember if I mentioned that Carol Fife is my co-author on the Just Cause. I want to acknowledge that. That's together, and I know Nikki supports that. The whole council supported that. So we have, like you said, we have a lot of ballot measures, but more than Oakland is used to having. But there are also fewer state propositions than the state has had in decades.
Yep.
So that maybe make it a little easier for us to do more local ones. And so hopefully people will have the opportunity to read the ballot and ask their questions and vote accordingly.
Yep, and Oakland Rising will likely, will be co-sponsoring some C3 candidate forums. We'll also be holding a ballot party, and then we'll be partnering with our sister organization, Oakland Rising Action, to talk through all of those ballot measures and things so that folks know how to vote. And I think that this is really important to Oakland. So appreciate you both. I appreciate all those who stayed on. If you joined somewhere in the middle, catch the beginning, because the two things that we shared in the beginning around Fair Elections Oakland and on the progressive equitable business tax are really important. And we went through some really important information there. So again, appreciate you both. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy and continue nourishing yourselves.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.